My name is Nick Raj from The Chartist. Thank you very much for completing our survey, and as promised we're going to give you the top 5 questions from that survey. And if we just reiterate what that particular survey question was, if you could sit down for a coffee with me and ask me any 2 questions about trading or investing, what would they be? So we got a very, very broad response, and we've taken what appears to be the 5 most common nuts and bolts questions and will now deliver them to you. Before we get to those 5 questions, I think it's important to take a look at my history and establish some credentials. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this business who sit in their back rooms, think up some very, very different ideas, or what they consider to be different ideas, without actually having real world knowledge. They package them up looking very, very pretty and then go and sell them for ridiculous amounts of money, and there's absolutely no basis for what they're doing. And unfortunately, there are a number of very high profile people in Australia who have written many, many books, but in actual fact have never worked in the business, and I find it very, very difficult to believe that these people will actually have some kind of decent grasp of what actually is going on behind the scenes, who the players are and what their intentions are. So my history is I've actually been working in the business for 24 years. I started when I was 18, and I also started trading when I was 18. Back then I was using a 5 and 10 day moving average crossover on the share price index futures. And back in 1985 the share price index futures were $100 a tick compared to today's $25. I worked for a Sydney Futures Exchange floor member from 1986 through to 1995, 4 years in admin, 4 years on the SFE floor itself. I actually used to work in the bank accepted bill pit, which is still today one of the biggest traded instruments in the global futures markets. And then I spent a year on the international desk. In 1995 I left that firm and went to work in HSBC Europe. Their London dealing room was one of the largest, if not the largest dealing room in the world, had about 1,000 traders going there. In 96 I was transferred to Singapore to deal for global hedge funds in and throughout Asia. And then in 1998 I left HSB with the information I had learned from many of those hedge funds and set up my own trend following hedge fund, which we ran through to 2001. Back in 2001 the laws changed, the regulatory laws changed here in Australia, making it quite difficult for smaller firms to operate. So we decided to roll that hedge fund into Macquarie Bank, and the next year I became an associate director. I left Macquarie in 2005, set up a Chartist, and we have our own AFSL. You can only have your own AFSL if you have market experience over the long term, and you'll note that there's quite a few people out here that do not have their own AFSL. They rent their AFSL from other providers. Unfortunately, I see that as a loophole in the law, and the only reason why these people would do that is because they do not have the capabilities of getting their own AFSL license. So I believe experience, 1, is very, very important, and 2, having your own AFSL license is also very, very important. So let's get on to those 5 questions.